Welcome to the first official devlog. It's Sunday, August 16th, and winter has brought the weekend rain in once again. I figure it's a great chance to do some more work on the project and figure out this blogging thing while I'm at it. I picked up a new camera this morning. The last one is great for photography, but it's starting to show its age when it comes to filming. No doubt it'll take me a little while to figure this one out, so hopefully the quality of the videos get better over time. So to bring you up to speed, I've recently updated some of the combat stats for the game. At first, characters and enemies just had health and a damage value. Because I can't possibly keep things simple, I ended up overhauling that heaps more than was needed. I've given each creature a number of attributes. The idea here is that a single attribute has a couple of effects. Strength, for example, affects accuracy with melee weapons, along with increasing the damage dealt with those weapons. The system borrows ideas from pen and paper games and tries to find a happy medium between the detailed game systems of those and the simplicity of a couch game. On top of the attributes, there's some other combat mechanics. I've set up weapons to deal damage in a range and of a specific damage type. This should keep the results a little more dynamic and give me some nice things to work with once the game's a little more fleshed out. I've put some of the groundwork for that in the code, but I'll be keeping the implementation pretty basic for the first demo. Now that the stats are improved, I've also updated the equipment systems. Weapons and armor can now come with enhancements, which will boost a creature's attributes when equipped. The idea here is to let players decide between certain equipment of a similar strength, but with different enhancements. It should also let me tweak monsters a little more, and even add some fun mechanics for the Phantom to use, like cursing a player's equipment by reversing the enhancements. These sorts of concepts are tried and true in most RPGs, but they often come with clunky menus and lots of downtime. Now, because I'm making a multiplayer couch-style game, I've got to be real careful not to go overboard. I have some ideas on how to approach these problems, but I'll leave that to another video. Once the equipment system was improved, it dawned on me that there was no actual way to swap equipment. The character spawned in with a sword, which was stuck to his hand. I updated the character prefab to allow swappable equipment, removed the default sword, and connected it all up. It works really well, except the animations were all set up like the character would always be carrying a sword, so I have to go fix that. I started an overhaul on the character animations just last night, but it didn't quite turn out as I'd hoped. There's definitely some work still to be done, so I'm going to get stuck into that now. Welcome back everyone. The animation rework from yesterday was a little bit more complicated than I hoped. It's now Monday afternoon, I've just knocked off work, made myself a cup of tea, and I'm about to get stuck back into it. Wish me luck. I've just finished working on the animation improvements. The character's back to smoothly transitioning from idle to movement based on their speed. The original goal here was to be able to go from having no weapon to having a weapon equipped, which we can now do. I was even able to animate drawing the weapon from the character's back. We still have all of our combat animations when we're attacking, regardless of if we're moving or stationary. The animator's certainly looking a little untidy, but I'll be leaving it as is until I start adding some of the other animations for weapons like bows and daggers. Now that the animations are done, I think I'm going to go back to working on the combat mechanics. Currently my targets don't react to combat, so I'd really like to have the back-end combat systems work start to show. I've got plenty to work with now that the animations are improved and the attributes and stats are in place, so I'm going to sink a decent amount of time in this until I think I've reached a good milestone for the feature. Welcome back everyone, it's Thursday afternoon and I'm going to give you a peek behind the curtain. This is my den full of toys. We have a variety of musical instruments, drums, all my guitars piled up in the corner there. And down here is all the junk that I've been throwing off of my desk just so you don't have to deal with it in the videos. And the glass door that I managed to break just last weekend, I think that's held together with some electrical tape. Now, here is where the magic happens. It's a little bit untidy during the day because I have to deal with multiple keyboards and mice while I'm still working from home, but usually by the afternoon I'll tidy it up a little bit and get ready for some filming. Speaking of filming, one of the big problems I've been having is this very bright monitor and a very dark desk, which doesn't look great. So I've been toying around with a few lighting solutions. Here we've got an upside down lamp. Down here, this one I created a couple of days ago with some greaseproof paper and a couple of pegs. But I'm still not quite getting the lighting that I'd like, so the plan for the afternoon is actually to take a bit of a break from development. I'm going to move that dark desk over to this bright window here. So hopefully we get some of that natural light coming in like this one right here. I'm not too sure how it's going to turn out, but we're going to give it a shot. So, wish me luck.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a few days since the last update. It's now Tuesday afternoon, and I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really had a lot of time to work on the project for a couple of days. I ended up being really busy with a few sporting commitments and a couple of dinners, so what little time I did have, I ended up sinking into a couple of small bug fixes and some project management tasks. I've got a bit of time tonight though, so let me get you up to speed with where I got to last week, and then we'll start looking at the next features.
So as you already know, last week we were focusing on improving the animations in the game, in particular the combat animations, so I'm talking things like drawing and equipping weapons and attacking with different weapon types. So here's the new animation controller. It's still pretty bare bones here, but it's set up to give me the flexibility to expand it as we need to add new animations or introduce new weapons. So we have a new unarmed state where we have both idle and movement, as well as a whole bunch of unarmed attacks, where we basically just have a whole bunch of punches and kicks. And we also have a new armed state, which has the same idle and movement states, as well as a whole bunch of sword attacks. Now here I'll also be adding all the attacks for different weapon types as we expand our arsenal. Naturally, we have a whole bunch of variations on the sword attacks as well to keep the combat looking interesting. So here's what some of that's looking like. We now have an unarmed state where the character can run around without any weapons, and naturally they can engage in combat as well, and you can see here that they now have a whole bunch of different punch and kick animations. Now, as before, we can equip weapons. I'll just pick up this sword and re-engage in combat, and we can see that again the combat animations are working as expected. Last night I did some refactoring to move some of the combat mechanics from the player controller into their own separate combat controller. This was done so that the common mechanics could be used between both the player and monsters. Now I've still got a few bugs to iron out, which is why we're getting these errors here, but I'm sure it won't take me too long to fix. Just as soon as those bugs are fixed, I'll be moving on to the combat lifecycle task. We have a whole bunch of features planned for this. The first will be introducing stats to our enemies. Then we'll get it so that the player both hits and misses based on their stats and the enemy's stats. So things like armor will aid them in avoiding damage. We'll get it so that damage is actually dealt to the enemies, and when they run out of health, they'll die. Once all that's squared away, I'll be adding a little bit of polish to make the combat look a little nicer. So I'll be replacing our enemy capsules with a proper enemy model. I'll be adding some animations like dodging, hitting, and dying. And then hopefully by the end of the week, I'll be able to add some sound effects to the game as well, so that the combat system is a bit more rounded out and feels a little nicer. Well, that about brings you up to speed, so I'm going to get stuck into some of those bug fixes now, and I'll check back in with you later tonight. Well, the night's starting to get on, so it's time for a quick update. I've made a start on the enemy prefab, which has all the relevant behavioural scripts attached to handle combat. I've added a pretty generic set of stats for the test enemy. Fortunately, all the work I did the other week with character stats actually paid off, which made it real easy to add another set of stats and have it automatically support equipment enhancements, armour and damage values. Jumping into the game, we can engage in combat just like we did before, but this time it's going to actually use some of those character stats. Now I believe the biggest problem I have is that the current target is based on the collider rather than a game object. This is starting to cause complications in areas like when the enemy is killed, because I have to do some pretty jank commands like get the transform's parent to see if it's the enemy that's just died. I'm going to try and clean some of this up tomorrow and hopefully fix that bug where all the enemies die at the same time. Well, I think that'll do it for the night, guys. I'm going to wind down now, maybe watch a couple of games on Twitch, and then call it a night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Welcome back. It's Thursday afternoon, I've got dinner prepped, the pool's clean, got me a sneaky snack summer roll, and a couple of hours till my evening plans. I squared away those last few combat bugs late last night, so it's time to get started on the enemy visuals. Hey everyone, we made it to the last entry for this week's video. Let me show you where we're at. You might have noticed that the knight character we were using last week has been replaced. The new model is actually using a modular system. Right now, the default character is just using a predefined set of armor, but I'll eventually use the modular system to add armor that can be equipped, like weapons can be right now. Our enemy has been upgraded from a capsule to a goblin. When you approach, he gets startled, and he reacts to getting hit and dodging, with both animations and sound. He's also a little dramatic when he dies. Here's how the audio is handled. I've made an audio manager which lets us play ambient music, individual sounds, and sound collections. Our sound collection will play a sound within the collection at random. It's great for playing audio clips for running or swinging swords, which could sound a little monotonous if we just play the same sound every time. All of the sounds and sound collections can be configured individually for properties like pitch and volume. The code's been set up to make it easier to play any sound or sound collection programmatically. We can just grab the audio manager, then call play to play a single sound, or play collection to play a random sound from a collection. Unfortunately, this wall of text when we're configuring the audio is kinda gross. I hope to take a second shot at the audio implementation at some point, now that I've got a better idea with how audio works in the engine. Some of the code in the combat system is pretty horrible right now too. I'll need to improve it before we get too deep into AI. With the audio and enemy animations done, we're all finished for this video. Next on the agenda will either be a first draft at AI to get the enemy moving around the scene and engaging in combat, or UI improvements so I can start to see what's going on in combat. If you want to see what I end up working on, be sure to hit subscribe and that bell icon so you get notified when the next video hits. I hope you enjoyed watching this one as much as I enjoyed making it. Feel free to leave a comment to suggest improvements to the videos or features you'd love to see in the game. I'll see you next time.